Hi everybody, welcome back. This is Matt Chat number 67, featuring part 2 of my interview with the producer of Fallout, Mr. Timothy Cain.
War never changes. The end of the world occurred pretty much as we had predicted. Too many humans, not enough space or resources to go around. The details are trivial and pointless. The reasons, as always, purely human ones. The Earth was nearly wiped clean of life. A great cleansing, an atomic spark struck by human hands, quickly raged out of control. Spears of nuclear fire rained from the skies. Continents were swallowed in flames and fell beneath the boiling oceans. Humanity was almost extinguished, their spirits becoming part of the background radiation that blanketed the Earth.
I think growing up in the 80s gave me a different perspective on this idea of a nuclear holocaust that the generations before me probably didn't have, and probably after me didn't. By the time I was in school, the teachers would say, if in the event of a nuclear attack, we're just dead. There's no duck and cover, there's no fallout shelter that's going to protect you. You're just going to be dead. The weapons had escalated to that point. But, going back to the 50s, which is where a lot of the inspiration for Tim Cain's Fallout comes from, there was a different idea. There was an idea that a nuclear attack, atomic bombs, whatever, hydrogen bombs, this was something you could easily survive. You could just go into a shelter, stay for a couple weeks, come back out, and restart civilization. I mean, even then, I don't think the government really believed this was going to be the case. But nevertheless, it makes for some very compelling fiction, a great setting for a video game, as you know if you're a fan of the Fallout series. So anyway, I had a great conversation with Tim last time. We talked about his origins as a programmer, a game designer. This time I want to pick it up with Fallout and hear about how this game, how the ideas for it came about, some of the philosophy behind it, and the reception it received. So anyway, a lot to cover. So without further ado, here is Mr. Timothy Cain.
I think the idea that you can adventure in this world, your own backyard, but all semblance of civilization has been destroyed, is just a really fascinating one to a lot of people. For me, especially for Fallout 3, I grew up in Virginia, right outside D.C. So the fact that Fallout 3 was set in Washington, D.C., I got to experience that firsthand. It was fun to run around D.C. and see subway stations that looked... They captured those subway stations very well. Bethesda did. And I think there was just this sense of, this is the world I'm used to, but it's not my world. And I think that resonates with a lot of people. And it also, the idea that if civilization was swept away, that's your chance to be a hero, that's your chance to be... to stand on your own 2 feet and not have to be constrained by society. I think a lot of people feel that urge very strongly as well. It's part of the whole role-playing game attraction, I think, is to you can be somebody you can't be in real life. We cast about a long time for exactly what we wanted the vibe of the game to be, and I forget who said it first. I think it was one of our artists who said, if the game was not set in the 50s, but set in the future that the 50s thought would happen, that gave us a lot of great ideas for robots would look like they did in Fantastic Planet. They would look like Robbie the Robot. They wouldn't be like Terminator robots. We would watch movies. I think Mad Max and Road Warrior was on a continuous loop playback in one of the artists' offices. We also watched City of Lost Children because that had really unusual steampunk tech in it. We watched A Boy and His Dog. We watched a little bit of stuff like On the Beach, which had been made, I think, in the 50s. And we tried to get an idea of what people in the 50s thought of the Cold War. Because you were actually growing up living in a society where you thought it was just a matter of time before the bombs were going to fall.
After all these years, I thought I knew you, but you turned out to be a stranger.
We are fighting for our lives, Anne. My family must survive.
And fallout shelters and government agencies that dealt with this were just a matter of life back then. And what I thought was really interesting was that the government really tried to downplay how horrible the aftermath of nuclear war would be. I mean, we actually watched a video showing kids just crawl under your desk and the fallout won't hurt you. And it's like, now we know, no, you're going to breathe it in, and it's going to be much, much worse than this movie is letting on. So we kind of adopted Fallout Boy as our mascot. He's always smiling. He was always cheerful, even when he was, his hands were being blown off by his guns backfiring, or he was happy and smiley, taking a bath to get all the radiation off of him. But in reality, that's not how it was going to be. We loved making social commentary in Fallout. It's riddled with it. A big part of Fallout was you don't trust your own government. We made it quite clear that the government was lying to you, that there needs to be a check and balance, that the military needs to answer to civilians, because the military in the Fallout world pretty much took over. Corporations were taking over. I mean, you saw that the vault you were living in was built by Vault-Tec, and all the products in there were built by Vault-Tec, or a subsidiary of Vault-Tec. So your Pip-Boy, your Stealth Boy, everything was related to this one overarching, massively invasive company. We even had, inside the Fallout manual, we had a page of describing other manuals you could buy from Vault-Tec, which made light of all the horrible things that could happen after nuclear war. And basically this company was making all of its profit off of people's fear of the war. And if a war actually happened, they planned to profit off of that as well. And I think we were just trying to comment that while this is all exaggerated, a lot of this is true in our own society. I don't think anybody doubts that, Halliburton profited off the Iraq war. Now it's profiting off of the BP oil spill. They just, it wouldn't hurt if that game or other games helped raise the consciousness of the players who played them just a little bit and made them look at their own governments and their own society just a little more critically. We didn't get a lot of attention leading up to Fallout shipping. There wasn't a big advertising campaign. I don't think people really thought, outside of our team, the team thought we were making a AAA product. I think outside the team, they kind of saw it as grade B. They kind of figured that the D&D games were going to be their big sellers, like Descent to Undermountain. They thought was going to be their hot game, and that maybe they'd pick up a few extra sales for Fallout. That's not really what happened. And so Fallout 2, which we had never really planned to make, we had not done Fallout thinking we'd make a sequel. All of a sudden, we were told, we're going to be making a sequel, we're going to keep the team together. What can we put? We were the very last page of the Fallout manual was hastily put together. It was originally blank and said, this area for notes. We hastily put together an ad for a GECK, the Garden of Eden creation kit, just as a hook for Fallout 2 in case we were going to use it. And, as it was, we decided that was going to be the main theme of Fallout 2. But we were a little surprised at the reaction. It was... We did ship it with bugs, which we weren't happy with, but it got critical acclaim, and we were all really pleased, and I think everyone was walking around with big smiles on their faces. The game shipped later than was projected, and since I was the producer, I was held accountable for that. It went from being a small team that nobody paid attention to. I mean, nobody really knew what we were making or paid us any attention for years, which was kind of nice. They gave us a lot of freedom, to being considered one of the big titles at Interplay, and suddenly we were getting a lot of attention from marketing and from sales. We were getting a lot of dictates on what we could do with the box and with the art. The original Fallout 1 box was oblong. It was longer this way than it was high. It was designed to sit on the side on the shelf, and it had a flap that folded up so you could see inside. We were told all of that couldn't be done anymore. It was going to be a different shape. It would not have the flap anymore. They wanted to change the art because the original one, well, so you can see it, it had the power suit helmet, and we were told, well, you have to have a face. So we want to put a person there rather than a helmeted figure. we were told the manual was too big and quite expensive to make, and I thought the manual was one of the greatest things about Fallout 1. It was a fun manual to read, and these were just things that, to me, worked for Fallout 1. I didn't understand why they were even being changed. It felt that in a big way, our success, because we were successful, we were losing part of the game to a larger group that had bigger plans for it. And while Interplay owned the IP, we did it as work for hire. It did kind of feel like our baby, and we were losing it. We were giving it, it was being going to be raised by other people or controlled by other people.